Welcome to The Culture. We rest at the pulse of the community, providing all things news, music, fashion, events, and everything that we talk about in between. It's a lifestyle. We are The Culture. Good day. I am your host for The Culture. My name is Jessica Garrett Modkins. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us. Today we have a friend to the show, Dr. Steve Gallen III, Vice Chairman for the Miami-Dade County Public School Board. Welcome, Steve, and thank you for joining us.
Glad to be back home again, joining the culture to provide further insight and discourse regarding some of the critical issues that we face. And once again, I want to commend you for your work, not only on the culture, but on a personal note, I want to commend and thank you for your role in supporting me over the past 4 years, prior to the past 4 years, as we've done this work. So again, salute to you, Jessica, and salute to the culture team for the phenomenal work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad that you started the show out talking about your professional role and how long you have been doing it, and the fact that basically you ran unopposed for this election. How does it feel? Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think it's a testament to the hard work, the dedication, and more importantly, the delivery on the promises we made. And in fact, we delivered above the promises that we made. When you look at the body of work that we have collectively done, and God has allowed me to be the conduit to that particular work over the past nearly 4 years, it has been phenomenal. It has been rewarding, and it has quite frankly been affirming. In this day and age, you know, we have the political landscape where a lot of representations are made, but very seldom are deliveries made on behalf of the people. We truly delivered on behalf of our students with no F&D schools in District 1. We delivered on our employees with me being the lead for the referendum, which has now provided over $850 million additional dollars for teacher salaries. And we continue to deliver on the narrative for equity and opportunity for underserved communities, communities of color, and more specifically, Black people. So again, we're very, very proud of the work that we've done. We have more work to do in the midst of these challenges. So it feels phenomenal after having nearly 4 years ago knocked on over 10,000 doors individually.
You did.
We, created a grassroots effort and truly the momentum for the change that our school district, our community, but most importantly, our children needed.
So what's next? I mean, you're in there for 4 more years. What have you set some goals for yourself?
I think 4 years for me, and I have the educational background, having been a teacher, a principal, a superintendent. I understand that school reform is not episodic. It is not a sprint. It is a marathon. So we're very, very excited about the work that we've been able to do over the initial 4 years, but that was just the foundation.
Right.
And in school reform, it usually takes 3 to 5 years to really get things embedded in the culture. COVID-19 has been somewhat of a setback over the past 6 months with respect to regression of learning for our students. I shared with the superintendent on yesterday that it is a multifaceted concern. It's not only the learning that our children have lost previously, but as looking forward prospectively, it's the learning that they're not going to realize in its fullness based on the condition. So we do have some concerns, so we have to persevere. So we want to build upon the work that we've done in terms of academic performance, in terms of closing further the achievement gap, in terms of providing for equity and learning and program provision and opportunities and economic opportunities for underserved and underrepresented businesses. And again, to continue to push the needle on appropriate compensation for our employees, our teachers, and all individuals who put their shoulder to the wheel of this work. So we're just getting started. We're just getting started. We are just getting started. But we're prepared to run the marathon for our schools, the marathon for our community. But more importantly, I've been running this marathon for our children for over 30 years as an educator. And I'm prepared to run to see what the end is going to be.
Well, your work is to be commended, Steve. I think that it is an awesome opportunity that you have placed before yourself in changing the trajectory of all of the students in District 1 and actually, quite frankly, throughout Miami-Dade County. And that leads me to my next question, where there's a lot of discussion about 2021, this next school term. How long were you guys in the board meeting?
We wrapped up just shy of 9 o'clock, so it was a full work day starting at 1 o'clock, about an 8-hour marathon. We had two items. SP1 obviously was the much anticipated reopening of schools planned in light of the COVID-19. And SP2 was the ratification of our teachers' contract, our
Mhm.
a UTD contract that serves our teachers, our security staff, our office staff, and all of the members under that particular unit. So we ratified we approved the ratification of that contract last night, so our employees can sleep well knowing that their contracts are secure, but we still have work to do.
Well, so let's go back to the agenda item number one.
Yes.
Can you please brief us on all of the discussion? I sat in for probably about 4 of those 8 hours,
Yes.
and it was a quite contentious conversation, but it needed to be discussed, and every area needed to be explored. Can you please brief the viewers on what the discussion was and where we are right now?
Yeah, well, the plan was predicated as we initially discussed. We were committed to opening schools, but we were not going to impose any decisions on parents because we believe that the most critical decision maker in the educational process of our students is the parent. So, yes, we're a public school district, but we advocate choice. And we don't mean choice in terms of programs, but more importantly, choice in terms of parents having to make the best choice for the educational experience of their children. So our plan was predicated on those principles, and we have 3 options. We're providing 3 options. We have several districts across the state of Florida and quite frankly across the country. It is one size fits all. We're going to open up school. You either show up or you don't. That's it. Either you come physically or you don't. That's it. Miami-Dade County Public Schools at the onset understood the nuances of our community, the need for innovation and creativity. And again, as I indicated, the value and the importance of school choice relative to a parent looking at their own individual circumstances and making a determination on what's best for them, their family, and more importantly, their children. So we have 3 choices. One choice is children will be welcomed on August 24th to come to a full 5-day-a-week experience as a traditional school setting calls for, a traditional school calendar calls for. The second option would be for parents who would like a blended model, maybe 2 to 3 days a week, with the other days being through virtual learning experiences and opportunities. And the third choice will be exclusively a virtual school experience. So those are the 3 choices, and parents would have to make a determination on what's best for them. We have established a number of protocols ranging from social distancing to sanitization to ensuring that we have our schools cleaned appropriately, to the provision of masks, face coverings being mandatory in our schools. So all of the CDC, all of the guidelines relative to those concerns and those issues regarding student and staff safety will be put in place. Those protocols will be fully implemented. But we also, again, give the parents the choice in the option. We also embrace, quite frankly, although we are in the midst of COVID-19 and we understand the perils and the pitfalls of this vicious pandemic, we do support and embrace the position of the American Medical Association Pediatrics that said we understand from an educational standpoint the most comprehensive and the most impactful learning experience for our students is one that provides for a face-to-face opportunity to engage with teachers. Our students maximize their learning opportunities through that particular venue, especially our fragile students who need that extra level of engagement. But again, we are providing those 3 choices. Parents have expressed some concerns regarding returning to school, but we've also had equally, if not a significant number of parents and families that are expecting for us to open up those schoolhouse doors to have their children provided with the care, the consideration, and the instruction in a structured manner that they become accustomed to. And again, this is a family choice based on family circumstances. And what I said at the school board meeting, we have families that have to work. We have families that have to work. We have families that have to work. And many of our families have struggled over the past several months. It's been very, very fragile. Our parents have come through during the initial iteration of our suspension of schools starting March 16th. It has been tremendously challenging for our parents, but many of these parents and families have to work. So we're going to be ready to receive those children from those families that need us to not only educate their children, but also make provisions for breakfast, for snacks, for lunch, and all of the things that represent a very well-rounded education. So the Miami-Dade County Public Schools is going to be on deck to do that. And again, this was not done in isolation. It was done through a working group of various stakeholders representing the PTA, the various unions, and each board member had an opportunity to make an appointment, which I was very proud to appoint Dr. Linda Brown, who has a tremendous track record of service, but also from the medical field, having head the Black Nurses Association. So we had input from the relevant stakeholders, so our recommendations were not received in isolation.
Very good. So that means that with the choice program, is that going to be a almost like the majority says what the whole does, or is that an individual decision?
No, it could be individual decision. Individual decision. So
Okay.
choice, each parent has a choice. So Jessica Modkins, you can have your children on distance learning 5 days a week. Your neighbor can have their children going to school 5 days a week, and their neighbor can have their children doing both. Sometime home, sometime in school. It's an individual home family decision. So it's not the majority making a decision for the collective. And that
Nice.
scenario can be a 30-30-30. You can have 30% in school, 30% online, 30% on a blended model. And that choice option does provide an opportunity for us to really amplify our capacity for social distancing. So if you have a reduction of about 30 to 40% of the students who are physically in the building, that provides more space for social distancing and us to implement the certain protocols that we have to enhance the safety of our children. It
Now,
is a parent's choice. It's a
okay.
parent's choice, yes.
So it's sounding as if, from a school setup standpoint, there's going to have to be a lot of maneuvering that might take quite some time. How long do parents have to be able to make that decision? And then how do they make the decision or inform the school board or school as to what their decision is?
Yes, we did an initial survey just to gauge parental input. And again, that data reflected nearly a third, and a third. But now we are going to have to make some initial decisions from parents. And we're asking parents to provide that information no later than, I think it's July 31st, the end of July, to notify their schools via survey, via communications. But parents should be on the lookout for information requesting their choice. And we understand that things change. So you can make an initial choice of one option. And as school rolls out, as certain circumstances at home, at work change, we have to be nimble, we have to be flexible, and we have to be adaptable. So parents, yes, we want you to make an initial choice, but we understand that circumstances at home, at work, and quite frankly, in the education of your child may change, and you may have to make a change to your initial choice. So we're prepared and we're anticipating that as well.
And typically at the start of the school year, it comes with a lot of anticipation for that upcoming football season. Has there been any discussion about school athletics?
Absolutely. We're going to, as a part of that particular process, we're going to begin summer physical training in 2 weeks. Our schools will be sent out communications from the district office, athletic department, that they can start conditioning in the next 2 weeks. We're looking at the middle of July. I think it's July 14th or 15th. Don't quote me on the date, but yes, by the middle of July, schools will be able to initiate their summer physical training for football programs and other related programs. Obviously, there are some other recommendations for fall sports when they will actually officially begin. There was a communication that came out from the FHSSA regarding pushing back the initial date. It's a recommendation. It's a recommendation to them for the first official game, but the physical level of engagement and preparation for our football program specifically should be able to commence the middle of July. And notifications will be going out to the individual schools through the principal, athletic director, and ultimately to the head coaches.
Okay.
And that will have to be implemented with certain parameters as well. So obviously they won't be able to congregate in large groups, but maybe groups of 4 to 5, 5 to 7, but all of those provisions that will honor social distancing and all of the protocols that we come to expect and we have now come to live with through this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And there are a number of viewers that are also going through a social justice shift in their lives, which um, quite frankly, doesn't necessarily touch on the school system per se. However, it does affect the children and those staff members that work for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I wanted you, Dr. Gallen, to just talk a little bit about, in the wake of George Floyd's murder that was videoed and went viral, and the entire world was able to view his death. There have been many protests, quite frankly, countless protests that still are going on to this day. Do you have any thoughts on what you see going on in the world right now? I know for a fact that there's nothing that either one of us have ever seen. I mean, even after the killing in the 70s of McDuffie and Miami, we experienced something here locally, but this has gone global.
Yes, yes, I've actually taken a number of public positions through my own media platform. I wrote several op-eds. One was called "Gasping for Air: What It Is to Be a Black Man in America." I've done a series on that, an interview series, a video interview, speaking on that particular experience from my personal, political, and public platform. Most recently, I released another YouTube video that really talked about my reflections on that. And it started out with the actual horrific scene of the accosting of George Floyd and the subsequent murder of him on videotape. And it really ran through reflections on my life as a Black man growing up in America, quite frankly. But yes, this is not a new phenomenon. Quite frankly, we talk about the 70s or the 80s with Arthur McDuffie, but we can also go back to Emmett Till. I mean, he allegedly whistled at a white woman, and we know what happened to him. But this is part of the horrific narrative of Black people in America. And what I see right now is significantly different. It's significantly affirming. And what I often have stated is that the reconciliation of justice for Black people cannot be squarely on the shoulders of Black people. What we have seen in the 60s and the 70s, and quite frankly, the 50s, going into the 60s with the civil rights movement, is yes, that was shouldered and that was led, and we had very public and proud conduits that God used, and vessels such as Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and others. But there were also white people. There were also people from different backgrounds that walked, that stood, that spoke, and that fought for humanity, for the justice of Black people, whether it was civil rights, voting rights, women's rights. And what we found is that the reconciliation of justice for the deprived and the denied cannot be squarely on the shoulders of those who have been victimized. It requires people, when we can't breathe, when we're gasping for air, we need those who are able to breathe, to not only breathe, but be able to stand, speak, and fight with us. So what I see, Jessica, right now, I see that movement has taken place, and I hope that it is a movement that continues and it's not just a moment. And again, it mirrors those challenges and those opportunities that we faced in the 60s. And again, very encouraging because it came from young people in the 60s. It came from a diverse group of young people in the 60s, Black, white, and Hispanic. And what I'm seeing right now is that being amplified tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold, and not only in cities or states or throughout this country, but as you indicated, throughout the world. And it's starting to translate into significant, tangible policy positions. Laws are being immediately changed. Businesses are immediately capitulating to their unjust hiring practice, to their unjust business practices. You had the NFL commissioner to basically, no pun intended, come to his knees and apologize and embrace the reality that Blacks face after the NFL had been silent for years on the heels of Colin Kaepernick protesting brutality and injustice from police against Blacks. So I've seen an awakening from Facebook to Wall Street to Main Street, to symbols of hate, symbols of racism being torn down. Just recently in Virginia, I think yesterday they took down another symbol of racism, a symbol of hate, and all of these Confederate symbols that were quiet dog whistles, if you will, of a horrific time in which society legally dehumanized us. And I see that awakening. I've never seen that before. These are tremendous moments, but I hope this continues as a movement. But I am encouraged, I am inspired, and we as the Miami-Dade County Public School Board have also taken a position. I actually proffered an item for us to denounce hate, to denounce divisiveness, and to really stand in solidarity and fight against oppression of Black people, people of color, people who are underserved, but more specifically, understanding the brutal, consistent, and horrific dehumanization and killing of Black people, more specifically Black men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. I even see now there was an article that just came out where Rundle is filing charges against some acts of police who their actions were found unjust. But then I read that she hadn't done anything like that in over like 27 years, and that she's up for reelection. And I understand that, but I am also happy that in her attempt to be reelected, she is doing what is right by the people. If that is the fuel that is needed in order for her to do it, then thank God. There are also, like you said, statues coming down. And then even in Broward County, our sister county, they have been discussing about the renaming of the schools that have the word plantation in it.
Yes. And again, this is about a heightened level of accountability, and people may not respect us, but what they also have come to do, especially elected officials, they respect and fear the vote. So the election season, the election cycle was very, very timely. I think COVID-19 also provided fuel to the fire for people to have been locked down for so long, and it provided an opportunity to implode in a very constructive, meaningful, and progressive way. So however the means is to whatever the ways is to get to where we need to get to, let's get there. We understand that we can change some policy positions, we can change some laws, and we understand we're not naive that we can't change what's in the heads and hearts of people, but we can also hold systems of justice, systems of education, systems of government accountable. And this is really about not an individual per se. This is not about groups of people. This, to me, is a challenge. This is a confrontation against a system of racism, of systemic racism. So we could talk about an individual, we can talk about groups of people, whether it's Ku Klux Klan, skinheads, or whomever. But these people are representations and manifestations of systemic racism. Systemic racism. And now I've said it, so this is not new language for me. I've said it last year. I actually, when people go to YouTube and see when I did something back in October of 2019, and I gave, it's on YouTube, and I talked about the difference between Trayvon Martin wearing a hoodie and Mark Zuckerberg wearing a hoodie. And basically the difference between the two is that one is Black and one is not. And we're perceived differently based on the color of our skin. And this was on the heels of Miami-Dade County Public Schools getting data that showed the disparity in terms of student arrests for Black students versus other groups, where we represent 25+% of the population, but we represented 50+% of students who were arrested. And that is a clear disparity. That data is undeniable, and we have to call it for what it was. And one of my colleagues, quite frankly, had the temerity, the unmitigated gall to ask for some data on what it is, quite frankly, to be Black. And I basically shared with her, I am the data, I am the narrative. I'm the data, I'm the narrative, 365 days a year. And really went into a monologue, if you will. I'll call it a monologue, Jessica, on my experience as a Black man in America and what each and every one of us faces when they see us, when they see us, when they see us, and no pun intended on the movie, when they see us, about the now the Vindicated Five, which was previously the Central Park Five. But that whole notion of when they see us has been a reality that all of us live with, Black men, but also Black women. We all live with the reality of what people conclude when they see us.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, for over 400 years, when they see us, they didn't see intelligence, they didn't see beauty, they didn't see strength, they didn't see pride, or they saw that and they feared that and they sought to destroy that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. You talked about a number of things. The fact that all of this that's going on is working in tandem with the political cycle, which is forcing the hands of many. When Trump is in office, and it seemed as if the world was overcome with evil and hate and those who wanted to oppress people of color. And it was just interesting the way we see that at a certain point with George Floyd, the righteous stood up and said, I have had enough. And by righteous, I mean, it's just not Black people, because we need those people who don't look like us to, like you said, stand up and amplify this conversation. And then you also mentioned about when they see us. I want to say kudos to TV shows like Blackish and Black AF, because at the end of the day, they have these uncomfortable conversations and surrounded about the things that we go through on a day-to-day basis. But what has happened now, when you go back and watch these shows, is so relevant, not only to us, now white people, non-Blacks, Hispanics, you can look at this show and then understand that it was not just something that was scripted. It was based on reality. My daughter was watching Blackish, loves it. She's elementary school. And she said, oh, mommy, look, he's talking about the talk. You've had the talk with me. And I said, yeah, I absolutely have. And then going back to what you said about when they see us, Kenya Barris with Black AF, he talked about the white gaze and the fact that people have been staring at him and his family, his wife. His wife brushed it off and said that we're attracted. But no, that's not what it boils down to. At the end of the day, they're looking just because they want to look at you. They stare. I mean, it is this auspices that we stand up under on a day-to-day basis of being subjected to really being objectified. Just yes. It's daunting. But I'm glad that we have pop culture that has brought these things to scripted TV shows so that people who are not Black can kind of see what it is that we go through on a day-to-day basis. And like the time, go ahead.
What you said about 45 in the White House having created a pathway toward oppression, that pathway has been there. That pathway has been alive and well. I think what we have now seen is an open demonstration of oppression. People have just been open with it. They just have been unapologetic about their oppression, about their brutality, about their hate, and about their racism. You know, it was something that was taboo to be openly racist in some circles, but people have been given license at the highest level to demonstrate a level of racism that they come to demonstrate. And there's another caveat, Jessica, that I have to say it because I was on the other side of that. And I was on the other side of the Black man. I'm not angry, I'm just outspoken. But for a while, I was the Black man that said what others didn't say. And, you know, you had people in our own communities, in our own leadership roles that were complicitly silent. And now it was cool, you know, to be silent. Now it's cool to speak up. And I just chuckled. I think I put a post on Facebook one day. I was probably throwing shade. I said, you know, it's funny to see those who whispered that Steve was too loud now finally speak up. And it's just, you know, it was that, you know, I was talking about race. I was talking about racism. I was talking about equity. I was talking about diversity. I was challenging the status quo for Black people in this community, specifically in the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. And now people in other circles would whisper that I was too loud, They would whisper about me speaking up. And now it's just intriguing to see some of these same people now grab the mic because now it's popular to speak up. But this was never about a popularity contest for me. It was always about standing up, speaking up, and fighting for what I believe in. And 4 years ago, Jessica, those were the 3 promises that we made. We would stand, we would speak, we would fight. I didn't promise that I would deliver over 40 award items approved. I didn't promise that I would eliminate F&D schools. I didn't promise that I would be the conduit for an $850 million in additional revenue for teacher salary. I didn't make any of those promises. But what I did promise that I would do, I would stand, I would speak, and if need be, I would fight.
The thing that separates you, Steve, is you've been free. You're not beholden to anyone. And that's the difference. Those people who are silent. Yes, some people have different paths to walk. There are some people who will vocalize the things that need to be said. But there is a difference when you're not beholden to someone who can stop what it is that you feel and say and not be afraid to speak the truth. Everyone doesn't have that freedom, and everyone doesn't embrace the ability to even fathom that for their life because they're so used to being subjected to certain things. And I do believe that comes with, that's your DNA. That's how God made you, to be able to be the voice for the voiceless. But when you are voiceless, you can't criticize those who are speaking.
Hello. And you know, we understand the role that Carter G. Woodson played in what was Black History Week, and it turned to Black History Month, but never lose sight of the classic that he wrote, and that's The Miseducation of the Negro. And one drawing theme of that book is the system's expectation for us to stay in our place, to know our place. When I read that book in high school, I understood that, you know, what is my place? What is my place? And you have some people, if they don't know their place and they can't find their place, they will go and carve out a place of submission. They will go carve out a place of silence. They will go and carve out a place of cowardice. They will go and carve out a place of complicity to be willing to capitulate to this system of oppression, this system of racism, and this system of silence in the face of brutality against our people. And that is what Carter G. Woodson told us. But I guess I've not learned to stay in my place. But I do believe that
you are in your place.
I'm in my place.
You're in your place.
I'm in the place that God has put me, because we serve a God that is not a God of spirit of fear. So, you know, it's so much, Jessica, but it's always great having this dialogue, and hopefully we can ignite that sense of courage, that sense of fight, and so many others. And I'm seeing that happening. I've seen that awakening, and I'm still praying that this becomes a movement that continues to move the needle once and for all.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Dr. Gallen, for coming on the show. As always, it is a great time. Love it when you're able to come on. Please, Steve, tell everyone your social media handle so they can follow you in case they're not following you on social media.
Facebook, obviously, Steve Gallen. Facebook, Twitter @Doc Steve Gallen, @Doc Steve Gallen. Instagram, the Dr. Gallen, THEDOCTOR Gallen. That means it's one, the Dr. Gallen on Instagram, @Doc Gallen, at Steve Gallen, Doc Steve Gallen on Twitter, Facebook Steve Gallen, and the Dr. Gallen on Instagram.
Thank you so much. We'll put that in the comment section. Follow Dr. Gallen over these next 4 years as he continues to be a conduit for change and changing the trajectory of our students at Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of.
Subscribe to my YouTube channel too. We have to work on YouTube as well.
Yes. Okay. And we'll put the YouTube channel in the comment section as well. Thank you for joining The Culture. You can follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Be blessed. Look forward to it. Thank you.
The Culture is produced and owned by Hip Rock Star Media and cannot be reproduced or broadcast without written consent by Jessica Garrett Modkins. All rights reserved 2020.